by electronic communications via the web platform GoToMeeting. The catastrophic nature of this declared emergency makes it impractical and unsafe to assemble a quorum in a single location, and the purpose of this meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the public body. A video recording of the meeting will be posted to the Policy Committee webpage. Next item on the agenda is the roll call. Ms. Vigil?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you would please have your microphones ready to unmute. I will be calling by jurisdiction and agency, and I will be listing both primary and alternates, as this is also a record of attendance. Chair Cindy Shelton.
Here.
For Stafford County, Mr. Mark Dudenheffer.
Here.
Ms. Crystal Vanush.
Here.
Ms. Meg Bomke. Mr. Thomas Cohen. For Spotsylvania County, First Vice Chair Tim McLaughlin.
Here.
Mr. Chris Yakubowski.
Present.
Ms. Deborah Frazier.
This is David Ross. I'm sitting in for Kevin Marshall, who's now primary. That change happened about a month ago.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Frazier's no longer, I don't think, a primary or an alternate.
Thank you. For the City of Fredericksburg, Second Vice Chair, Mr. Matthew Kelly. Mr. Jason Graham. Mr. Tim Baruti. Mr. Mark Whitley. Mr. Doug Fawcett. Representative from the Secretary of Transportation, Ms. Marcy Parker.
Present.
Ms. Michelle Shropshire.
Present.
For Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission, Dr. Robert Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Joseph Stainsby.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Betsy Massey. For Caroline County, Ms. Nancy Long.
Here.
Mr. Jeffrey Black. For King George County, Ms. Ann Kupka.
Present.
Ms. Kathy Binder.
Present.
Thank you. For Federal Highway Administration, Mr. Ivan Rucker.
Ivan Rucker is present. If you don't mind, let me also ask if Richard Duran from our office is on the line. Richard, are you available? Are you on the line? Okay, thank you.
For Federal Transit Administration, Ms. Tanya Holland. Virginia Department of Transportation, Ms. Susan Gardner. Mr. Stephen Haynes.
Present.
Thank you. For the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, Mr. Todd Horsley.
Here.
Ms. Jennifer DeBrule.
Here.
For the Commonwealth Transportation Board, Fredericksburg District Representative, Mr. Cedric Rucker. Fredericksburg Regional Transit, Ms. Jamie Jackson.
Here.
Mr. Craig Reed.
This is Jamie Jackson. We actually turned in our documentation to have an alternate, which is Aiden Quirk.
Yes. Mr. Aiden Quirk.
Here.
Thank you. And for Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee, Mr. Dave McLaughlin.
Here.
Thank you. You do not have a quorum tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or I am the Madam Chairman. Thank you very much, Ms. Vigil. I wanted to talk to you guys about it. We anticipated not getting a quorum tonight. You are not aware of this, and I will make sure that each one of you receive these letters that we received from the city, basically warning us that if we didn't change the agenda to what they wanted, then they would break the quorum. And as you know, one of the items on the agenda was the ability to stop that from happening, just like what happened at UWRC. And unfortunately, they decided to do that anyway. So, but I find it unfortunate that members of FAMPO who represent all these jurisdictions choose to abdicate their responsibilities and not attend our meetings rather than actively participate. We have a lot of differences to work through because we are a diverse group. I embrace diversity, and one of the things that I love about working with this committee and other committees is we come from different backgrounds. And I think it's really important for us, and it's our responsibility to come together and work through those challenges for all of us. For more than a year, Jackson County, and I know Spotsylvania in some places, has worked actively to increase our transparency, particularly in regards to FAMPO and GWRC funding streams. And we know that by doing so, that's made several people very uncomfortable. We faced some pretty significant opposition along the way, but that's not the first time we've been held hostage tonight. As you remember, back in June, the same thing happened to us, which is why we embarked on the road of changing the bylaws to get rid of this problem that we have with the quorum. As elected leaders, though, it's our duty to participate and vote. That's what our constituents elected us to do. And just because and when issues don't go our way, at least in Stafford County, we know that we have to find some room to compromise and work together. But we should never just quit and walk out, because I think it's disrespectful to you guys. It feels disrespectful to me. But over the weekend, even though I received significant pressure from the city of Fredericksburg to amend the agenda, then I just felt like I couldn't do it, because I really felt that that was the responsibility of all of FAMPO to make such decisions, not my own. And these requests were completely outside the historical norms. I contacted my county administrator because I was uncomfortable with another CAO directing us to do something or asking us to do something. She didn't direct us. She asked us very politely and formally. So I didn't mean to say that, but it was uncomfortable. And I think that it was inappropriate for me to receive it. And I really had to bring it to you guys. And as a member of FAMPO, I represent Stafford and on my board. And they asked me to move forward regardless on the issues that we were to consider this evening. As I mentioned before, I met with council earlier today to understand Robert's Rules of Order as detailed as possible, even discovering this little anomaly that occurs with some bylaws that I mentioned with GWRC. And the intent is to find some way that we could work together as a body, because we have work to do. And if we're not doing the work, we're not moving forward with anything. And it's my responsibility to make sure that we move forward. There's some things that we can do tonight. It's up to you guys. One of the things, we can adjourn the meeting. Yay, we can do that. Another thing that we can do is we can go through the items that we have on our agenda. The only difference is we can't vote. It does provide an informative process. It honors and recognizing the staff and the work that's been done before us. But I put this up to you guys. How do you want to do? So I'd like to open it up for discussion. Would you like to adjourn the meeting, or would you like to go through the action items, maybe removing some of them due to the time? It's your decision. Mr. Dudenheffer.
Point of order. We have a large number of people who have phoned in that we don't know who they are. Can we confirm that those are not members of the Fredericksburg delegation who walked out formally but may still be listening in and therefore are part of this meeting?
Ms. Fishel, do you have the ability to identify those individuals that are on the screen?
No, Madam Chair, I do not.
good point, Mr. Dudenheffer.
So they may
have
very
a
well
quorum.
be here because they want to hear what we're doing, and then now they're hiding behind their no video. And therefore we don't have a quorum.
But how do we know we don't?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Nancy Long. When I click on initials, I can come up with the name of the person. Can you all do it there?
Somebody just left.
that's interesting.
Caught.
Just says caller. That doesn't give you a name.
Yeah, if they're dialing in from just a cell phone, it won't give a name. It's only if they're dialing in from their internet when you have to
Yeah.
put your name in.
You may.
Well, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, as again, as in the GWC meeting, I'm tired of this childish behavior because all of us have other things to do. We have other jobs. We have other things that are important to do. We spend this time to come to these meetings and only have childish activities, walk away and waste everybody's time and money, right? Because it costs money to put these meetings on. It's disgraceful. So I will make a motion, as I did in the last GWC meeting, is that we send a letter from the chairman of FAMPO to the city, the mayor, the city council, the secretary of transportation, and the secretary or the commissioner of VDOT, expressing our extreme displeasure because this is the second time in the last few months that Fredericksburg has walked out, costing the taxpayers money and delaying projects and causing just havoc, and it's unacceptable. And something needs to be stated. It needs to be a very firm letter to them. So I put that in the motion.
I think we can could we do a will of the board?
Yeah.
We just
Without objection, yes.
With a point of order. We do not know that we don't have a quorum. We can look up on the board, every one of us, and we can see that we have tons of callers that are in on this meeting that are not identifying themselves. So without knowing that, we could very well have a quorum.
So, Madam Chair, I withdraw the motion, and I would request that we send that letter without objection from the members of this panel.
As a will of the consensus.
As a will of the consensus. That's fine. Thank you, sir. What I was going to say is that in the absence of not really knowing what to do, as a chair, I'd like to rule that we still do have a quorum because we don't know who these people are, and let's continue to conduct our business.
Madam Chair, I don't know exactly what caller number I am. This is Jordan Chandler from FAMPO. I'd just like to announce myself as a caller since my laptop microphone was not working.
Thank you, ma'am. All right,
Madam Chair, this is Adam Hager with FAMPO. Can I offer a suggestion? We don't have the capability, as Ms. Beal stated, to identify callers when they only call in. What we could do is what Jordan just did and ask all of the callers who are not attending by computer to announce themselves, and we can account for folks that way. That's an idea for you to consider.
Yeah, I think we could do that, and we could spend a lot of time, and I really respect your idea, but we could also just move forward. And under chair rule, if you understand Robert's rules, then if anyone disagrees with this, you can make a motion to disagree with me. Otherwise, we move forward till we find out truly if we did lose a quorum, and that would negate any votes that we've made, but at least we would have made some progress and understanding of where each other is. So without further ado, I'd like to move for approval of the October 19, 2020 Policy Committee agenda.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second, Spotsylvania.
Thank you, sir. All that approve say aye.
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 All who disapprove say nay.
Nay, this is Marcy Parker.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Because I did get a nay, then I'd like to do a roll call vote.
Very unexpected.
Ms. Vigil, would you do a roll call vote?
Yes, ma'am. So is this on the motion to move forward with the agenda?
No, ma'am. This is a motion for the approval of the policy committee agenda.
Okay. Approval of policy committee agenda. Roll call vote.
Yes, item 4.
Stafford County Chair Cindy Shelton.
Aye.
Mark Dudenheffer,
Aye.
Ms. Vanush,
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Mr. Yakubowski,
Aye.
Mr. Ross,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly, Mr. Graham, Mr. Baroody. Ms. Parker,
No, because you don't have a quorum.
Dr. Schneider,
Abstain.
six yeses, one abstention, and one objection.
Thank you, ma'am. The motion passes.
Actually, there's more than city thing.
Oh, well, we could say that. Okay, but I'd like to move on to public involvement. We did not receive any questions or comments from the public on the items that are on our agenda. Are there any members of the public who are on this call that would like to make a comment?
Yes, I'm here as a member of the public.
Who is it?
Please state your name and please join our discussion.
Thank you. My name is Beth Black. I'm a citizen of the great city of Fredericksburg, Virginia. And I wanted to reach out and thank the delegates, Matt Kelly and Jason Graham, for sticking up for our city. Thank you. I would also make note that I suspect that you do not have a quorum, that it's many members of the city of Fredericksburg who are tuned into this meeting tonight and not the actual delegates. Thank you.
I should be pretty disappointed.
Wow, I'm sad. But thank you very much, ma'am, for your comment. Are there any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. I'd like approval of the September 21st, 2020 Policy Committee meeting. It's an action item. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second, Spotsylvania.
Thank you, Spotsylvania. Is there any discussion? All who oppose say aye. You know what I meant.
All in favor.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. I'm sorry. I really apologize. All that are opposed say nay.
Vidas abstaining.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other abstentions?
PRTC is abstaining.
Thank you, sir. All right. Ms. Vigil, I believe the ayes have it. Correct?
Yes, that would be six yeses.
Thank you. I didn't write them down, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Next item is to discuss the CMAQ SCBG call for project. This was an action item that was a result of the actions that were being done in GWRC. We mentioned that earlier at GWRC. Mr. Alec Oziak, are you going to be representing the TAC in this meeting?
I think Adam was going to give the.
Oh, Adam was. Oh, I'm sorry, Adam. Adam, please.
That's okay. That's okay, Madam Chair. Thank you. So I will keep this relatively brief. This does pick up, of course, from the September 21st Policy Committee meeting, as well as the October 5th TAC meeting. So the few topics that we'll cover, again, as a quick recap of the last TAC meeting, a few considerations for action, some next steps, and an action item for the committee to consider, as well as some additional materials that I have in the presentation that I won't go over in full. The first item, and this is referenced on the agenda in item 7A, number 1. This is a recap of the TAC meeting from October 5th. I'll point out that there was a little bit of confusion after the discussion at the Policy Committee meeting. Our staff had asked for direction on a call for projects specifically, and of course there's a number of other moving pieces on a broader level that have been taking place since July, one of which is the idea of the 5307 swap idea. And so the discussion largely focused on that idea, and we did not get the formal sign off on moving forward with the call for projects. So in light of that information, what we proposed as a staff to do is to ask for a TAC endorsement of understanding that the policy committee is looking to move forward on this idea to go ahead and accept projects and score them so we can have that information essentially in our back pocket, given the time sensitivity at hand. So just to remind everybody, any smart scale resolutions of support have to be submitted to VDOT by October 30th. So the TAC was comfortable with this proposal, so it wasn't just our staff, acting on our own, if you will. So we didn't want to go against the wishes of the policy committee, but understood that there was general consensus on moving forward with this idea. There's a few considerations that I wanted to point out before any action is taken, the first of which is the Route 1 and Telegraph Road project. And so this goes all the way back to July, where the TAC recommended approving Resolution 2103. And this included a balanced transfer of existing funds as well as some FY21 funds to the amount of $525,000 that would go from STBG funds to the Route 1 Telegraph project in Stafford County. The policy committee approved an amended version of that resolution and deferred action on Route 1 and Telegraph in particular so that Stafford County could work with VDOT on a few details. The second consideration that I have for you is the Route 1 and Market Street project. So this is going back to last month's meeting where the policy committee took action to fully fund that project. With no existing funding available, that action requires moving funding from other projects and will need to be considered by the TAC. Spotsylvania staff indicated at the October TAC meeting that fulfilling the policy committee's action is not immediately time sensitive and can be revisited in November. Those are the first two considerations. The final one is with 5307. At the time of making this presentation, I wasn't entirely sure how things would play out at the GWRC meeting. For those who were not in attendance, there was a split vote on the CMAC and STBG. So with that in mind, there's a rather limited amount of funding. As the allocation stands right now, there's about $245,000 in potential funding, which is currently allocated to the Garrisonville to Quantico bus project, which our understanding is that that project is not moving forward. So next, I have a series of options for next steps, and I'm happy to discuss these in more detail, but just quickly, option one is to direct our staff formally to hold the call for projects and allocate any surplus funding for Smart Scale Round 4 applications at a second meeting with the policy committee that must be held by October 29th. That's 10 days from now. Option two, and this is referenced in agenda item 7A number 2, is to direct us to hold a call for projects and then delegate authority to the TAC to allocate any surplus funding for these Round 4 applications. The TAC is meeting on October 21st, that's this Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. The third option is to direct us to hold the call for projects so that they can be scored and then ready to receive allocations, but wait until spring 2021, which is the normal annual cycle, to consider new or revised allocations given limited funding and higher priority commitments. And so this is where the Route 1 Market Street and Route 1 Telegraph projects come in. Option 4 is to postpone action on the call for projects, which is an option. And then just for reference, I'm not going to go through these in full. We do have the list of projects that were submitted. We have a summary of committee action since May on the various moving pieces. And then we have the current allocations as they stand, which is reflective of Resolution 2103. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Telegraph project.
Do we have any support for that idea?
I so move.
Oh. Do I have a second?
So it came in broken. What was the motion?
Would you repeat what you said?
Sure. The motion was to move forward with a combination of options 2 and 3, where we would have the formal call for projects, where each locality would submit up to 2 smart-scale projects for additional funding. And then for option 3, we would move forward with funding for the Route 1 Market Street and funding for the Route 1 Telegraph Woodstock project.
That's my motion, what he said.
Since Fredericksburg not here, I will second it. That would be
Thank you.
Spotsylvania because we're here.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair has the floor. Okay. Hearing a motion and a second, do we have any additional discussions on this item, on combining these two? Hearing none, I'd like to close the item and go for a vote. All those who are in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions?
Lack of quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other abstentions?
PRTC is abstaining.
Thank you, sir. Hearing none, the motion passes. Moving on to item number, let's see, are we at LRTP? Mr. Hager?
Sorry, Madam Chair, we are on 7B project updates.
Oh, I skipped past that? I did skip past it. Thank you very much, sir. Project updates. Mr. Agnello, are you going, before I do that, is it necessary that we have a discussion about these tonight? Is this something that we could defer, or can we defer these? Mr. Agnello, you're on to represent Route 1 Market Street. Can we defer this to our next meeting? Spotsylvania County, I'm going to assume that we can. The next item is Telegraph Road, Route 1. Mr. Oziak, can we defer this to the other meeting?
Yes, Madam Chairman, we can defer this item.
Okay, it's not because it's time sensitive, it's because the time is sensitive and we have a lot to go through. So if you feel that this is value for the body, please do. It doesn't have to be because we have a timeline we have to meet. Okay, moving on, and I apologize because I jumped to C beginning, thinking that we could defer those. The 2050 LRPT update, Mr. Hager, is this something that we can defer, or do we need to talk about it tonight?
Madam Chair, this item as well as item 7D can both be deferred.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take a motion on these deferrals in a minute. The last item is item E, and that's on the UPWP amendment. I just wanted to bring up to you, we had an amendment that's in the package. Specifically, in our last meeting, it was brought to our attention that if we're making changes to the bylaws, there's some expectations that those would be on the UPWP. We've had competing information coming back to us. Some of that we made sure was in the package, both coming from our council on whether that had to be in the UPWP, as well as I wouldn't say comprehensive view, but a very strong view of looking into other UPWPs and seeing what those occur. I just would like to say one thing is that I went through a bunch of UPWPs. Hey, if you guys want copies of those, just like I gave you for the bylaws, I have them. I'll be glad to share them. And when I did the review of the UPWPs, I found out something that every transportation planner knows but me, because I'm not one, is that the work in the UPWP is to really fill out the project list that you have and get those approved. And so that way people that are working against them can bill against those line items. Is that correct? I think so. And but on the UPW, the work that's been done on the bylaws to date, there's been no work done by any staff on the bylaws to date. All the work that was done for me to, as I promised you back in June, was to gather all the inputs that we had over the last couple of years and changes that people wanted to make to the bylaws, put them into a comprehensive document, send those out to you guys so you can see all the changes that people have suggested over time so we could address those, and then address just the quorum issues. And that was, again, all that work was done by me. And if I check, I really don't think that anybody's going to allow me to bill against the UPWP. So even having said all that, I just wanted you to know and let VDOT or anyone else weigh in on my perception of what that should be on the UPWP. But however, if you look at some of the changes that are substantial that could happen should FAMPO decide to go through with them, then we would want to have that amendment. And so that's why we have that in front of us today. And to look at amending our UPWP. In addition, you'll notice that we say bylaws and any other administrative task. I find it crazy that a 15-minute job would require an item on the UPWP. Having worked for the federal government, I absolutely recognize that a 15-minute job takes you 3 months. So, okay, that was sarcasm. Nobody's laughing. All right, I'm just trying to cheer you guys up. It's a solemn day. So without further ado, does anybody have any questions and want to talk about why this amendment is in place before we go to a motion to approve the amendment?
I'm just going to speak out here. I think the whole thing was a fabrication from the very beginning, and that this is nonsense to put a discussion of our bylaws in the UPWP and think that we need state and federal approval to work on our bylaws. So this was connived and contrived ahead of time so that it would create confusion in our trying to do our deliberations. So I favor that we move forward.
Mr. Tower, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, just, and perhaps this is a question for VDOT or for Mr. Rucker. I believe we understood from the correspondence that we received last week that an administrative change on the quorum was not subject to the UPWP amendment. However, as Ms. Shelton referenced, a large adjustment to the bylaws that might require significant staff time is a UPWP amendment. Is that was our understanding from the emails?
Mr. Rucker, Mr. Towery's asking you a question. I don't know if you recognize that he was asking.
I didn't recognize whether if he was talking to Federal Highway or speaking, if Jason was speaking to VDOT. But yeah, what I'm assuming here is administrative modification. In that case, the staff would make the request to the MPO, and the MPO could handle that through administrative modification, not through an amendment, which will require public review.
So we can move forward.
But Ivan, your email also said that if it was a more substantive change, then it would require an amendment to the UPWP if they were looking for redesignation.
Absolutely, I gave several examples of what may trigger a redesignation and perhaps involvement by the governor.
Thank you.
Here, my understanding is that this.
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Mr. No, I apologize for interrupting you. You have the floor.
Okay. Sorry, Madam Chair. No, my understanding was this was a simple administrative modification request to the bylaws. Now, there was some discussion earlier about Robert's Rules of Orders, and I just asked that you consider that whether or not this change meets Robert's Rules of Order. That's all I ask you that you consider with this administrative modification to your bylaws.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll take that and make sure that it does. Okay. Do we have a motion for Resolution 2114 to amend the UPWP?
Why do we need to? We've just been told we don't need to do that.
We do. I'm asking, it's an action item. So I'm asking if we have a motion. If we don't have a motion, we don't. So what we're being told is that it's an administrative action and we don't require an amendment to the UPWP. However, and I'm just mentioning where it's here in front of us now, we know that we are going to have substantial discussion on the changes to the bylaws, looking at some of the suggestions that have been made. And as I promised to all of you, that I would include all of your comments, regardless of whether they were viable or they would end up on, the floor at the end of the day. And so there are definitely some items that are suggested that may not make it through our approval process just within FAMPO. Because some of them actually, and I'll just be honest about one of them that I think is questionable. One of the suggestions was that to not have the DOT as a member of a voting member of the body. I think that there might be legislative requirements that have VDOT having to be a voting member of that. So I read that somewhere. I'm not, there's people much smarter than me that will know if that's true or not, but that was one of the suggestions that was given. So all I'm saying, what am I saying? I'm just saying I'd like to keep it on.
Can we get that checked if there's a statutory requirement for VDOT to be on our policy committee?
Well,
a voting member?
Yes. Let me talk a little bit about the bylaws or for a second, if you guys can give me some grace. The reason I asked for the amendment is it's already in front of us, and even though for the quorum it's an administrative action, we can amend the bylaws without actually having to go through this amendment. This amendment that's on here is for the future, not for today. It's for the future, and then we as a group will decide how we amend the bylaws. My assumption is we're going to do like every other committee I've been on, that we're going to assign a subcommittee that's going to go and address the bylaw changes and work with staff and bring those forward. And so, does that make sense? And if I'm not clear about that, please ask me, because I think it makes sense for us to go ahead and have it on here as an amendment, because we do, if you look at some of the changes that are on there, they could result in some substantial changes to the bylaws that we meet the requirements that Mr. Rucker has laid out.
Madam Chair, this is Marcy. After the
Yes, ma'am.
last meeting, I sent out the Code of Federal Regulations that states what makes up a redesignation, and it states in there that the major transportation agencies have to be on there, and it's in your MOU with the governor that a representative from the Secretary of Transportation must be on.
Okay, well, that's just one of the many items of changes on the bylaws. I think there's 32 items that were recommended for change in the bylaws. That's just one of them. And so, yes, that addresses that one, but we're not looking at that yet. We haven't even established a committee to go look at all those changes to the bylaws. And my expectation as a committee member would be that every single item that's been recommended by someone on this committee, that we give them a reason why that's not a good idea. It's an educational opportunity for all of us, for some of the people that have suggested items as well. And I think, and I appreciate you sending that out. And that item is actually, now it's all ready. So when the bylaws committee meets and starts going through it, they'll have the answer to that one item. But thank you for being preemptive on that. This isn't a bad thing, guys. Everybody's all solemn. This is like an easy thing for us.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think because you and I have talked about this, I think what you're suggesting is that the matter of quorum is an administrative change and does not require the UPWP amendment. However, there are a number of significant other items within the bylaws that there is a desire at large to consider changes to, and so I think you're suggesting that for the purposes of having those discussions, you should consider the UPWP amendment tonight.
But not necessarily on the quorum issue.
Absolutely.
So we can move forward on the quorum issue without the UPWP, but since it may involve lengthy discussion, that we create a committee appointed by the chair to review those other proposed changes.
Okay. Thank you, guys. I apologize for us moving into a discussion without our formalities. I just recognize Mr. Dudenheffer and his comments that he was making to Mr. Towery. Does anybody have any comments or questions about their comments or the ones that I've made? Hearing none, I'm going to go back to asking, is there a movement for Resolution 2114 or again? Make a motion or don't.
This is the motion you've proposed that requires a UPWP change. So therefore, you're talking about, and I haven't read but you want to appoint a committee, right?
No.
To look into that after we've approved.
Yeah,
this.
that's later on, yes.
So
That
let
makes sense.
me ask you a quick question, Madam Chair.
Sure.
If we use local money, do we need to modify anything because we're using local jurisdictions funding to make any modifications, then it's not using any federal or state money?
That is not.
Will you be able to fund the staff with that?
I don't know the answer to that one, Mr. McLaughlin. Mr. Rucker, are you able to answer that question, or Ms. Parker?
How is that identified currently in the UPWP? Where it's spelled out that local money only, you know, with the task and the end product. I'm just curious how does that? How would you identify that for because public taxpayer dollars are being utilized? How is that visible to the public so the public can comment on that?
That's a very interesting point. And the real answer is it's not in there at all. And so I think regardless of funding source, Mr. McLaughlin, it goes back to, it still needs to be on the UPWP. And again, I'm only talking about the substantial changes to the bylaws that we've talked about we want to make in the future, not the quorum item that we can address tonight as administrative action.
Right.
Okay. All right. I don't have a motion for or against, so I'll move on to item number F, bylaws update. Again, this is from myself. I mentioned earlier about the bylaws. What you have in your package is an extraction out of the big document that we had earlier last month that showed all the changes that people wanted and only focused just on the one quorum item. We didn't get complete with that one, as you well know, because we've had challenges keeping a quorum. And this was the proposed change that we received from our own county attorney, and it simply states that if we, I'm looking for that, if someone has it in front of them.
Could we basically just say we want to mirror what GWRC has?
We could have said that, but in our past, that we've always said that we wanted at least one voting representative from each jurisdiction to be present in addition to the majority membership. And so what you're suggesting is that we change that. The administrative change that we were talking about was that if someone leaves a meeting, the vacancy should not be considered establishment of a quorum. One, at any meeting, once a quorum is established, regardless of any member leaves, the quorum shall be considered maintained for the purpose of discussing, considering, and voting on any remaining items on the current agenda. And it's written that way specifically to avoid any changes. There's been suggestions that we've made changes to items and then voted on them the same night. I'm still looking for that, by the way. I don't know when that occurred. But when I talked to Ms. McClendon, that's why we worded it that way, so we would make sure it was very clear that we couldn't lose a quorum and then people suddenly change what's in the agenda and then vote on it.
But that if they decide not to show up at a meeting, we don't have a quorum.
If all of Fredericksburg doesn't show up, just like tonight,
yeah,
that's correct. We don't have a quorum.
But if we use the GWRC language, it would just be the majority. It'd be simple, and we already have a precedent.
Any discussion? Thank you, Mr. Dudenheffer.
So I moved that, by the way. I moved that we mirror the GWRC language in our bylaws.
Mr. Rucker, if we mirror the language in GWRC, which says only that we need a majority of voting members present, is that still an administrative change?
Not taking any steps.
I would view it as administrative change, but again, from the standpoint of Robert's Rules of Orders, I don't know whether or not that will be consistent with the rules.
It is, and so it is, and it is consistent with Robert rules. Both of those are. So, because that's why one of the reasons why I met with our attorney, who is a parliamentarian.
So currently, you're looking to trying to sort of adopt a process or mirror a process that is more friendly to Robert's rules than you currently have.
That's correct. It's less restrictive.
You might that might be considered significant. But I will, in this case, I will defer to the state on that, or to I guess the local body on that, regional body.
I understand. Mr. Dudenheffer, all due respect, I do think that it might cross that line for what is considered restrictive and not restrictive on administrative. So that's why I made sure this language that we have in front of them is not. The removal of requiring a jurisdiction to be present is. So if we don't, hey, this was just a discussion item. We don't have to, we're not going to vote on it. You'll notice it's not an action. There's nothing related to that. I just wanted to have an open discussion about what is it that we want to do. All right, hearing none. Any other comments or questions or concerns?
Do Spotsy have any?
Yeah, Mr. McLaughlin, do you have any comments, questions, or concerns about the bylaws?
Yes, but nothing we can do about it right now.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're moving on to item G, the CTAC membership update. Ms. Stacy Fine.
Well,
We've received several letters of resignation, I understand.
Ms. Chair.
Go ahead.
So I just want to go back. Did Mr. Dudenheffer make a motion on the quorum issue?
We did not have a second.
I'll second it. I'm sorry, I missed my mute button.
Okay. That's correct. And just thank you, Mr. Towery. So I have a motion and I have a second. Do we have any discussion?
I want to restate the motion just so everybody.
Yeah. The motion was to adopt the language that's currently in the GWRC bylaws and use those for FAMPO. I do want to warn people, my discussion related to that is that we have a 30 days rest period for any changes that we make to the bylaws. Those specific things have not been published, that we haven't put them in any packet. We've never said that anywhere. So we have to put that out for 30 days for public hearing before we could vote on that. So, okay. All right. Having heard a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed say nay. All the abstentions?
Abstain due to lack of quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Snyder?
Abstain.
Thank you, sir. All right. Now we're moving back to item G. This is an update on the CTAC on the reappointment for Spotsylvania.
Yes, so we received 2 letters of resignation recently. One was from the CTAC representative of King George County, Miss Leslie Jordan. She actually had expressed her intent to resign last year to her Board of Supervisors. The message never reached FAMPO staff, so we're just now informing you that we have learned she's left. We also received a resignation from Timothy Haddix, a CTAC member from Stafford County. On a positive note, Neil Holleran has been reappointed by Spotsylvania County, and we're excited that he can continue working on CTAC. And all counties and the city's clerks of administrative assistants have been notified of CTAC members' extensive meeting absences. FAMPO staff is required to track meeting attendance, and once a member misses 3 consecutive meetings, we notify your clerks or admin assistants. So that has happened recently. And all counties and the city currently have open seats with the exception of Caroline County. Stafford County currently has 2 open seats. Spotsylvania County has 3 open seats. Fredericksburg has 3 open seats. King George County has 2 open seats. And the policy committee still has 3 at-large seats that you all can fill if you so desire.
In January.
Thank you very, very much. We're missing a lot of people. I wasn't aware of that. I appreciate that update.
Sure.
So those people, including Stafford County, we need to get on this. So thank you. Ms. Fites, you're going to go into Title VI?
Yeah, so just briefly, FAMPO is currently undergoing a routine Title VI desk audit, and we are pulling records going back to September 2017 up until this present September. Our documents and answers are due to VDOT at the end of this month. And our responses so far reflect that FAMPO continues to improve with respect to proactively reaching underserved groups and individuals. One important note here, one question FAMPO must answer to VDOT is with the racial makeup of committee members. So it's very, very important that we have all committee members and their alternates take the survey that went out, I believe last week. Yeah, last week, Ms. Millsap should have sent that out to you all. So please take that. It takes less than a minute. There's only one question on race that you have to answer, but we need that back probably by the beginning of next week so that we can submit our answers in a timely manner. And the attachment that you are looking at right now, this is a recent copy of our signed Title VI reassurance. And at a future policy meeting, we will need to have a vote to have this included into our public participation plan.
Thank you, ma'am. I was reading the screen. Do you have a list of those people who have responded and who have not responded to the survey?
I can pull that up and then we can later, tomorrow, I can pull it up and then go through and filter out who hasn't responded and follow up with them individually. Is that where you're going with it, I assume?
Well, I was actually going to offer my own services that if by Friday, if you do not have responsive answers from the voting policy members, then also send me that list and I will also call them. See if I can help you with that.
Thanks.
It shouldn't take as much to get that done, and it's required to do. We like to follow laws, right? Okay. Our next item is upcoming policy committee meetings. Originally, we were talking about having a second meeting to take action on some TAC proposals to fund Smart Scale. Is that still something that we need to do, Mr. Oziak?
Yes, Madam Chair. After the authorization tonight for the call for projects, we're planning to have a meeting with the TAC on October 21st to kind of go over those projects and try to set some funding. So we'd like to have another policy committee on the 26th to actually take action on those recommendations.
Okay. Do we have a motion to have a meeting on the 26th? Is there any other thing that we can do besides have another meeting?
Madam Chair, this is Adam. Can I point one thing out from earlier in the meeting?
Yes, sir.
The motion that was made, at least as I heard it for the call for projects, was to combine options 2 and 3. Option 2 was to delegate authority to the TAC to make the proposed allocation decision. I would have guessed, I suppose, that this body would want that item to come back before the policy committee to make that decision. which it sounds like is in line with what Mr. Oziak suggested. So could I potentially suggest, I'm not sure what the process is here, but reworking the motion and have it be a combination of option 1 and option 3 from the earlier action that was taken?
Let us pull those up. Can you pull them up on the screen?
Just take a motion.
One or
We're back.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. We accidentally killed ourselves on the phone. This is Stafford welcoming us back to the meeting. Did you guys have any discussion that I need to be aware of? Okay. If what I understand from what you're saying, Adam, is that if I'm looking at option 1 is formally direct staff to hold a call for projects, and then option 3 is formally direct staff to hold a call for projects so they can be scored and receive allocations, and then wait until spring 2021 to consider new or revised allocations given limited funding and higher priority commitments. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion for option 1. It's Crystal from Stafford.
Option 1 and 3?
Yeah, 1 and 3.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Spotsylvania seconds.
Thank you, Spotsylvania. Do we have any discussion? Hearing no additional discussion, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those who abstain?
BRTC is abstaining.
Abstained.
Thank you, ma'am. Ayes have it. Moving on to the next item on our agenda. I think we're done with that, right? We don't need that meeting. And that was on correspondence.
You need the meeting on the 26th.
Oh, we still need the meeting on the 26th? My apologies. There was a recommendation that was brought up here in the meeting to hold a second meeting on October 22nd or 26th to take action on those tax proposals. So we need to have another meeting, a special meeting for us. How long would that meeting take? 15 minutes? 20 minutes?
Depends how long the discussion would be, but it should
Okay.
be relatively quick, just a vote.
This is a new item. Is there anyone that's opposed to having a meeting on October 26th and it needs to be another day? Okay, hearing none. Does someone want to make a motion to have a meeting on October 26th?
So moved. Crystal
Thank you.
Stafford.
Thank you, ma'am. Spotsylvania, I need a second. Unless you disagree.
What time? 7?
Or Fredericksburg.
Second.
Thank you. We'd like to hold the meeting at 6:30. Is that a possibility?
It is for me,
6:30 better?
early.
Early. Do you want to do it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
Probably can't do it.
Okay, I'm just asking. I'm just looking for discussion. You guys are dead. Okay,
6:30 or
so-
7 work for me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Black. I'd like to, so we're going to have another policy meeting on the October 26th. Only item is to take action on the proposals that TAC is going to have. Mr. Oziak, when is TAC meeting?
We are planning to meet October 21st.
Oh, that's why it's the 26th. Okay, I got it. All right, thank you very much. Item number 8 is correspondence. Within your package, you received some correspondence. One of the items you'll see what I referred to earlier, is the recommendations from Ms. Parker as well as from our Stafford County staff on their perceptions of UPWPs. I think we've beat that to death. So I'd like to move on to any staff and agency reports. And specifically, I'm going to go do it a little bit differently and go by VDOT. Do you have a report that you would like to provide to us?
No, not at this time.
Thank you, ma'am. DRPT.
No, thank you.
Sir. PRTC.
No.
FAMPO, any additional comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the last item, board member and chair comments. I'd like to go by roll call. Ms. Lay, you
Yes,
can leave me to last. I think I've talked a lot.
Okay, is it all right if I start with Stafford County, though?
Absolutely, ma'am.
Mr. Dudenheffer.
I
Ms.
think
Vanush?
most people, is
Oh, I'm
that
sorry.
on?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm miffed, to be honest. After I've been serving on this board, except for when I was in the House of Delegates since 2006, and I have never seen such a childish behavior and by a jurisdiction in this area with such an issues that we face here that are so important because they're not getting their way. It's absolutely absurd, and there are complicit other people on this phone who are participating in that. I can't tell you how disappointing it is that this happens, and we should all be ashamed. But anyone who from the public or from the press who has listened to this, I would gladly discuss with you what is happening behind the scenes that isn't visible to you guys because of the lack of transparency. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Dudenheffer.
Ms. Vanush?
No comments.
Thank you, Ms. Vanush.
For Spotsylvania County, Mr. McLaughlin?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure that our letter that we agreed upon at the beginning of the meeting is sent out this week to the city. I think in our correspondence manual says we have 48 hours to produce a draft and to execute it. So I just want to make sure that whoever's drafting this letter, that it is drafted tomorrow, it's given out to the board members for any comments, and that the chair can have it signed and delivered to the city and the city council and the Secretary of Transportation and the Commissioner of VDOT by Friday. Is that pretty clear? Okay,
That is
thanks.
very clear. Laughlin, I'll be doing that.
Great,
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Mr. Yakubowski?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Mr. Ross?
I don't have anything to add, thank you.
That will be all for member comments.
All the Fredericksburg.
All of the Fredericksburg people, they could be.
We think they're on. They may want to speak.
We think Fredericksburg here.
Sorry. Yes, Mr. Kelly? Mr. Graham? Mr. Baruti? Member reports, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on, we have a closed session. Our closed session, I'd like to read us into closed session. Would you bring up the paragraph? Oh, that's gonna be hard. Hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for making it larger. Whereas the policy committee desires to adjourn into a closed session for discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of FAMPO, specifically the administrator and staff assigned by the George Washington Regional Commission Executive Director to carry out the Urban Transportation Planning Program. I move that FAMPO go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.23711A1 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing issues related to personnel. Anyone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Stotsky.
Thank you very much. I have a motion and a second. All who approve, say aye.
Aye.
All nay? All who abstain?
VDOT abstain.
Thank you, ma'am.
BRTC abstains.
Thank you, sir. Moving into closed session.
We got to make sure everybody's on.